Hey BookTube, it's Jackie from Jack's Literary Corner, and it's time for a currently reading update. Okay, put these down. So I'm off the next 2 days, so I'll be doing even more reading. I'm moving pretty fast with my reading this week. Or not just this week, but the last couple weeks. And I guess that's because, there's no opportunity for me to go to the library or the roast office because both are sadly closed with this whole, sadly, yes, but I know that it's necessary because of this whole virus. And if you, get more than less than 6 feet close to someone, then you could potentially give them that lovely, delightful virus if you have it or are a carrier of it. So it's probably the best, not saying and is not having any contact with anybody except for, of course, there are the hospital, there are certain stores like Walmart and grocery stores that stay open. But I feel bad for the college kids because some of them are really struggling with being able to keep up because, yes, there are, most people generally have access to the internet, but not everybody does. And sometimes people live in areas where they can't get a good connection and they have to find alternative ways to get their homework done. And, colleges don't consider that. I have my coworker, Virginia, she basically has to rely on doing it at the store, doing her homework at the store, and it's still not easy because our signal sucks at the store. And, sometimes her hours are different from mine. A lot of times she's more able, because she's a student, she sometimes has to work in the evenings. So that doesn't give her a lot of time to do her work, because, during the day, although, except for now, that is, she's at school, and then now I don't blame her for wanting to sleep in, because she has to get up early. I don't know what time her classes are, but I imagine she probably has to get up early for her classes. I think there's been times where she's had to. So I am so glad I'm not a student anymore. I could technically go back to school and get my bachelor's degree if I wanted to, but as of right now, I'm perfectly content with just, I have enough of an education where I can get a job. I still have an associate's degree. And then, if I did move back to Virginia, and if I decide to get a government job which pays better, in a job that would mean I actually would have my weekends, the real weekends, the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that at least with that, I wouldn't be a student. I still wouldn't be a student, but it would still be it would definitely be a better situation. It'll be a little bit better of a situation because, but this job is still pretty, I wouldn't have the same kind of problems as she does. Unless I decide to go to a college, a community college in Virginia or something, if I go to, because I don't know if I'll ever, while I'm here, I don't know if I'll ever go back or not. Because I just want to, I say before when I tell people when I bring it up, because of course with my face, people assume that I'm a high school student just going into college. But I do sometimes mention, I could go back to school if I wanted to, and I always say, well, I just want to, get used to my job and pursue it for a little while before I go back. So far, I think it's almost been 3 years. Either it has been 3 years or almost 3 years. I'm not sure. I started in 2017, although technically I started at the end of 2016 into 2017, I think. And I've been there ever since. So it might be, actually, I think it might be 3 years. I don't know. I don't pay attention to that kind of stuff anymore. If I was a student, then yeah, I probably would pay attention more to that. I am never gonna do that or as long as I'm able to get away with that. Well, not that you have to do it, but anyway, I'm just rambling. So as far as reading goes, let's see. I finished The Night Circus, which is, I forgot to grab that one. I'm gonna do a review on that one after I film this video. Of course, after I say hi to my dad, because I know he'll interrupt and ask where and call out to me to see if I'm still home. Not that I would go anywhere in this weather, and the fact that I can't really go anywhere with not just the weather but the virus. But I'm trying to spend most of my time on this book, Stephen King's Four Past Midnight, which is a bunch of 4 novellas in one, and I'm reading The Library Policeman. I decided to read that one because I figure it's one that it has to do with books and reading and the value of books and the library and stuff. When it comes to I always pick the books that I most am interested in and have a connection with. I decide which one to read. I have to say, I definitely like his novellas better than his short stories. His short stories feel like they lack something. Like they introduce the situation and then go straight to the horrors. But I understand why, of course, they're short stories. But what I love about Stephen King is that even though I'm more of a plot-driven reader, I do love how he spends so much time on developing his characters and introducing his characters to us and making them interesting and even likable or really hateable. You get to know his characters and you relate to them on some level, and you can see them in the real world, these type of people. But in this particular short, in The Library Policeman, we have this guy named Sam Peoples. He's in a small town in, I think it's Iowa. So this is one of the stories where he doesn't write it in Maine, although he does mention Maine in the book. And Sam is, I think he's a realtor or real estate or something, and he's asked to give a speech to replace a guy at the Rotary Club and give a speech. So, being very anxious about that, he wanting to do a good job, he's talking to a friend who he had dated, Naomi, who suggests, oh, why don't you go to the library and pick up some books? I'm sure Mr. Price can help you find books to help you come up with a good speech. And it's not Mr. Price there, it's a woman named Ardelia Lords. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. Look, I'm going by, in the show that I watch, there's a character named Delia, and I think it's spelled, with the exception of the 2 letters, the last part of the name, it's spelled the same way as the character in the other show, so that's what I'm assuming it's pronounced Ardelia. And she is very right off, there's something off about her. She's very, a little weird, a little creepy, kind of intimidating figure. And she does not respond well to Sam. She does not like Sam. And especially when he starts telling her that when he goes into the children's section while he's there, and he sees some creepy posters that are a little inappropriate that might scare kids, and he points them out to her, and she gets very defensive about it and thinks, no, it's necessary, and the kids like the posters and blah, blah, blah. And Sam, of course, dismisses her behavior, her weirdness, and just wants to get away from her because she's, freaking him out a little bit. And the speech goes well, he uses the stuff from the books, but then somehow he ends up losing his library books. And Ardelia Lutz had told him, and so did the posters, that if he doesn't return his books on time, then the library policemen are gonna get him. And she starts contacting him, messaging him, and reminds him that his books are late, because he ends up being a day late. So she starts haunting him, and he starts to realize, and then when he goes back to the library, it turns out the library is different, and no one knows who Ardelia Lords is. So he starts to suspect that something's not right. Something doesn't make any sense, and this woman might even be a ghost. And when he brings it up to the older townsfolks, they do not want to talk about it. They freak out and are like, how dare you bring up that name? And I do not know if I said too much. As I'm sure you guys have figured out, I am bad at giving descriptions of books. I mean, sometimes there are occasions where I do a good job at giving this book's description, but other times I'm not. And I don't know if I said too much or because some people just give very limited information, especially if it's a novella or a short story. Although this is longer than a short story, so maybe that's okay what I said. Like, it's good enough. But this is so creepy, and I think anyone who uses the library would be freaked out by this, and a lot of people probably can relate to that anxiety of making sure, or at least when you're a kid, the anxiety of wanting to make sure that you return your books on time and you don't upset the librarian or your parents. Even though in the real world, library would not act the way Miss Cordelia Lortz acts. Like, the most you'll have to do is pay a little bit of a library fine, which is money, an actual fine, not like something crazy. She'll just, the librarians just make you pay a little bit of change, a little bit of money. But like I said, I feel like a lot of your inner child might be a little creeped out by this. Now, I can kind of understand if you are a librarian yourself that you might not like this novella, because it kind of, like, as one reviewer said on a Goodreads review, when I decided to go check out the reviews on Goodreads, just see what other people thought out of curiosity, a lot of them were, there was one that was from a librarian who gave it 2 stars and I understand why, she found it a little offensive, because librarians already have a bit of a reputation, like people, or a stereotype, I should say, not a reputation, but a stereotype that either you're the kindly old spinster, or the cranky old spinster, or you're the sexy librarian. And which, not all, the librarians are just like people. I mean, they're not a particular type of person. It's just someone who loves books and wants to help kids find a good book and not, have to spend money in the process. There's no type of librarian, but there's, a lot of books and movies and TV shows, they portray librarians a certain way. Even, like, in Harry Potter, the librarian was this creepy old spinster lady that was, like, kind of mean. I'm trying to think of another, example. Another good example of someone. I guess in a way, Buffy, on the show Buffy, there's another stereotype of librarian, which is the man that is the intellectual, professory type persona as well. There's also that. I can't think of any other good examples of the stereotypical librarian. So it might be, then again, you might be like, even if you're a librarian, maybe you would still enjoy this and be amused by it if you're able to get past that and not let that bother you. But anyway, so far it's really good and really creepy. And I definitely, like I said, prefer his novella. I think I'm gonna like his novellas more than his short stories, because short stories they feel like they go straight to the creepy, and they don't really spend time helping you get to know. But like I said, I get it. It's because it's a short story, so they don't have a lot of time. But anyway, it's really good. And I don't know if I'm gonna jump into the Sundog or what yet, but that's the last one in this collection. Because if you look at my shelves, I have that whole turn where you only see the pages, and then when I finish the book, I turn it back around. And if I get to the Sundog, I could turn it back if I wanted to, if I finish the Sundog, because I have already read although I technically have not, I haven't read Secret Window, Secret Garden because I've only seen the movie, so I guess that doesn't really count. But I did read years ago The Longlers. But I do need to read. I do want to reread it. So I don't. So I don't know. I guess maybe I should just so that not that that's like not that I have to do that. Like I can take my time with this book, but it's also kind of a feeling of showing that I've accomplished and I've read a lot of books. So when I turn around, I like a feeling of satisfaction. So I don't have to feel guilty anymore that I have so many unread books. If I am able to turn this book around, that's kind of why I'm tempted to read them all, or read at least read the ones I haven't read, even if I don't reread the Longlers. And one other thing about this is that Ardelia Lortz reminds me of Pennywise from It. She's like with what she does and what her true form is, and if you read It, and if you read this novella, the Library Policeman, then you'll get what I mean. But I don't want to say it because I don't want to spoil it for anyone. All I'm gonna say is that. So I guess I am. If you've read It, then maybe I am kind of spoiling, or at least hinting at something that would spoil it a little bit. But yeah, but yeah, she reminds me of Pennywise a little bit. So also like I said, I made a little bit more progress in this. It's very slow going, but Dick and Rosemary, the husband, are they are like declared their love for each other, but Nicole, and at the same time, Rosemary's kind of spending time with Nicole as well. And last time I said this kind of reminded me of the rules of civility, but also it kind of reminds me of Sarah Waters as the paying guest, with the whole woman falling in love with a married person that comes into the spouse of a married person that comes into her life. But this is the difference is it's straight people, so she's straight, so she falls in love with the guy, not the woman, not the wife. Although I think it'd be interesting to what she did. She fell in love with both of them. It will be a little like not something that I'm familiar with, but it would provide a very interesting story if she was in love with both of them. But I don't know if how open-minded or liberal if Scott Fitzgerald was. I mean, although he's a writer, a lot of times artists, people that write authors and actors, are very open-minded people because they have to be. It's like they almost have to be open-minded people because they have to understand different types of people. And in fact, I've talked to Terry. I've talked to Terry about this. Oh, she's talked about how she wants certain things in the books that she reads. I always recommend her, why don't you write your own? Of course, this is coming from someone who has the ideas, but easily gets distracted, and only writes like a little bit every so often. But she, I always tell her that to write her own works. And I also tell her that she can't just write people that are like her, people that she would like, guys that she would want to date, or people that have her personality. She can't just write that. She has to write different types of people. And, she has to write people that are completely different from her, or people that she wouldn't like as a person. Because, you can't just write a book with just about where even if you're writing a book about one person, it's not there's still going to be other characters that person is going to interact with, and you want those characters to come alive. You don't want them to be one-dimensional. So you got to learn to write about multiple types of characters. And, so I bring, I'm trying to remember why I brought that up. But I know I was talking about how it would be interesting if she fell in love with both the characters, both people in the marriage. But I don't know. Like I said, I don't. Oh, I remember. I brought it up because I was talking about how authors and actors are very open-minded because they are exploring different types of characters, whether they're writing them down or acting them out. They have to get to be open-minded to explore different types of people, even if they can't relate to them 100%. Although once you get successful enough, I imagine you can pick and choose, and as in the acting industry, you can pick and choose who you want to play, the types of people you want to play. But I think a good actor can play will play some character that's totally outrageous or totally different from them. Like I said, this is just going very slowly. I feel like I'm distracted by other books while this is a little more slow moving. It's definitely not, it's not going quick for me like, The Great Gatsby is. But I want to read it and I want to finish it. And I like it. It's just going slowly, and I'm trying to piece together what's going on in the plot. That's that one. I have not progressed very far in the Exiled Queen. This is kind of what happened with the Demon King, where I went through it slowly, and then but eventually I picked it up and started just keep going and focused only on this book. It doesn't help that Shonda Williams Chima's chapters are a bit long and tedious at times. But once I get to a certain point, then I think I'll keep going. It's just I'm again distracted by so many other books. But like I said, this one had picked up right where the first one left off. The characters are, traveling essentially and trying to figure out what is going on and what their involvement in this whole situation is. And I don't know who the romance is gonna be with, or if there's gonna be like, I know who currently the romance is, but is there gonna be like a love triangle, or like. Or maybe the romance is not with who I think it is, and it's in the end, it's always gonna be this character. So I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that part out. But there was an aspect of it in the beginning I was kind of surprised by, like like a character death that I didn't expect, which I guess is a good thing. But I thought at the last minute he was, that person was going to turn out to not be dead at all. At least one of them was going to come out of the woodwork and be like, oh, they tried to kill me, but I went into hiding and escaped. But no, both those characters are dead. But it's actually good as far as the emotion goes, and it's good motivation as well. So I haven't read any more of this. I had to, stop and focus. That's another book. And then I'm working on Something Wonderful, which is about, like I said last time, I said this is about Richard Rogers and Oscar Hammerstein. The first chapter was about Oscar Hammerstein, his life, and how he became this creative genius. And they talk about how his lyrics are very simple, but get right to the emotion, to the heart of the message of the song. And I think I'm trying to think of, I can't remember how his family, but, I remember he didn't have much of an affectionate relationship with his dad. I feel like his dad was very, not much in his life. And now I'm on the chapter about Richard Rogers, and he's the music. He's the one who writes the music, not the lyrics. And his family is a very musical family. He doesn't, you know, it's music is in his blood, you could say. Let's see. Oh, and another thing about Hammerstein, Oscar Hammerstein, is he wasn't, he wasn't very successful for the longest time. I mean, he wrote Showboat, and I think in his 20s, but after that, it wasn't until he was in his 40s, I think he started to become successful. He had a lot of flops in his career for the longest time, for those years until he was in his 40s. And of course he worked with other people before. He worked with Richard Rodgers. Let me see if I can. But there were they mentioned a lot of songs that I recognize, and some of them are on my album from Dreamland, my Dreamland album, which is an album that's performed by I can't remember the woman's name, but the man is actually Brent Spiner, aka Data. In case you don't know, although in the Star Trek, one of the movies, the Next Generation movie, he does sing. But but it was kind of like a radio, like a compliment to old radio shows. Like before there were movies and TV shows, they used to do there were radio shows where they would tell stories through, talking, and there was no, you didn't see anything, you just heard them perform. You could picture it in your mind, but you didn't get the visual, at least, and some of the songs in that they would perform, because they did a lot of, or was considered pop music in the 40s, not the 40s, some of those songs, I guess, were written by these two. Or written, or no, are there actually, no, they might have just been referencing the songs by other, or not these two, but Oscar Hammerstein and whoever he was partnering with at the time. Like Some Enchanted Evening, although it's called something different in Brent Spiner, in the album that Brent Spiner did. But it's very, like I said, if you are a Broadway fan, you love Broadway, and you love stuff like plays like Oklahoma, musicals like Oklahoma, Cinderella, The King and I, etc., then I think you would find this really interesting to read about these guys. I don't know if I wonder if Larissa would be interested in this. Although, like I said, it might take her a while, and even if she is interested in it. And also, she might not want to read she might not be interested in nonfiction anyway. At least not a big, long novel like this. She might not be interested, especially because she struggles with reading quickly reading through books as it is. I know that she's a little bit slower and she gets more distracted easily. She can't just sit and read a book. But yes, but anyway, this is really, if you love Broadway musical theater, then you might like reading about these guys. And they actually, it came out around the time that Hamilton had come out, so there's mention of Hamilton and how their songs were kind of like it compares it to Hamilton, how Hamilton is so revolutionary today, and how Oscar Hammerstein's songs his lyrics were revolutionary back in the 40s. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is so I decided I had this urge to go ahead and do another reread of something that I've been meaning to reread, and I already started it a while back and got to page 50 at the time, and it's still on Goodreads. It's still accounted for on Goodreads, so my goal is to get past page 50 with it, and that is Kate Morton's The Distant Hours. I love Kate Morton. I love her writing style. It's so beautiful. You just get lost in her writing. It has a magic to it that is just beautiful to read and enchanting to read. She writes a lot of her books have a mystery aspect to them. They're mostly historical fiction, but they do take place in modern times, or whatever was considered modern when she published the book. And she already has, she has this one. She has this one, The Lake House, House at Riverton, The Forgotten Garden. What's that one called? This one more. I can't think of what it's called. It's whatever that one that I'm thinking of. The Secret Keeper. That's right. Which I should remember that because I've said in the past that's one of my favorites. I just couldn't think of the title. And then The Clockmaker's Daughter, I think, and that's her newest one. I think I got all of them, so I think she has 6 novels. And they're all mysteries, and where like you have someone from the present day who discovers something about the past, and she's trying to piece it all together. It's usually, most of the time, it's a she. The main character is always a she. And she's trying to piece it all together, trying to understand sometimes. And a lot of times she's connected to it, or she's friends with someone who is connected to the past. And in this one, our main character is Edie, and her mom, during World War II, was a child that got sent away by her parents during the war. And she ends up staying with these 3 sisters at like this gothic castle manor type place as a little girl. So in the present day, which is the 90s, I guess it's not the present anymore, but Edie's mother receives this letter that she has a really strong emotional reaction to the point of crying. And Edie is a little curious about this, but her mom is like, she mentions the basic gist that she stayed with these women, and this is a letter for one of the women who took her in, and they're sisters. And she says, it wasn't a big deal, it doesn't matter, so Edie kind of naturally forgets about it. But then eventually she ends up coming with help from, ends up coming across the house. That it's not far from where not far from where she lives, and she comes across the house again and starts to piece it all together, especially when she meets the 3 sisters as old ladies. And I love all of her books, but I always say that The Secret Keeper is my favorite. Although for a while I said it was The Forgotten Garden, and that one's still there. Like, I feel like, especially now, I need to reread all of her books and just do maybe a video. Like, I know there's a lot of booktubers, there have been booktubers who have done videos on particular authors that they love, and talk about their favorite books by that author, and I've always wanted to do a video like that. I just haven't gotten around to it because it's been so long since I reread her books, and I have not read the new one yet, but I wanted to do some rereads first before I read the new one. Which means I got 5 books to read, and these books are a bit chunky, but I love them, and they're beautiful books with amazing stories. And this is one of those books that's considered. It actually is implied to be a book club book that you can and there's a discussion section in the back, like with questions that you can talk about in a book club. I think that's really cool. And sometimes when a book has that, I always like to think about, like, read the answers and then think about how I would answer those questions. But it's so beautiful. Look at these covers. I love these covers. I prefer these covers, these type of covers, over the Clockmaker. I don't hate the Clockmaker's Daughter cover, but I kind of prefer these covers. As soon as The Lake House came out, or not The Lake House. Was it The Lake House? Yeah, The Lake House. When that one came out, that's when they started changing the covers of her books. But these were my favorite covers. Like this painting style of an image and this design, this flowery, a lot of times it's some kind of flower or border or something, this border around the main image of the cover. I think these designs are so beautiful. And I'm just disappointed they stopped doing that. They stopped doing these designs. Okay, so those are the books I'm kind of focusing on right now. I haven't read any of the other books. I need to get back to reading Count of Monte Cristo, but I haven't done that lately. But like I said before, I feel like I need to just sit down and read a good chunk of it, and get back into the rhythm of it. And I thought I was going to do that for a while, but then I think I kind of jinxed myself. And I think part of it is, and sometimes it's partly because, like, I happen to be going on a vacation soon to either my grandma's or my sister's place, and then I had to bring in a whole bunch of books and start several books, and then that kind of messes me up. But I find it hard to burn. Like, I think about, I'm only going to bring this many books, but then I end up thinking, I got to read this one, I got to get back into this one, and this one, and I want to read this one, and I just end up bringing more books than necessary, and it's a lot harder for me to decide what books I want to not bring with me and just wait until, the next time, until I get back. And then I also want to, for April, I feel like I need to read Finale, because it's the only book left in the Caraval trilogy. Because it's a trilogy, so I feel like I need to read that one at least by April, so that eventually I can see if my cousin Mackenzie wants them and give them to her. If not, then I'll just give them to either when this all finally goes away and the bookstore reopens. Which I'm wondering, I think that the bookstore should, when they finally reopen again, and if this all goes away, which hopefully will soon, because now my parents got me thinking, what if my convention gets canceled? Which it's not until the end of July into August, but if this lasts that long, then it might happen. I just try not to dwell on it because I don't want to get all upset, and, I want to be mentally prepared, and I feel like maybe, although in the end, I probably will still get upset, but I want to prepare myself. And of course, my dad makes a joke about it. It's like, we can't talk about the virus. We can't talk about things canceling. It's like, really, Dad? Really? You have to, I mean, I love your sense of humor, but not always. So that's gonna, but I just hope it doesn't last so long that has to be canceled too. I mean, so far nothing's happened. I went on the website because all of a sudden I started to think about it. I try not to think about it, but when people are constantly talking about it on the news and at work and stuff, people are thinking that because, I work at a grocery store, so it's definitely a place where you gotta be really careful about spreading germs. It's kind of hard not to think about it. So it's like, I went on the website, and so far, there's no banner that says this convention has been canceled. I haven't checked to see if anyone's. I'm almost afraid to check. And also, I'm thinking, the convention's not canceled, so I don't think. But then some people might back out individually. But maybe they're seeing what's going to happen, because it's not until the end of July into August, so maybe they're hoping by then this virus will be gone, so they're not going to do anything until, maybe if it's still going on during the summer, then maybe then they'll cancel it. If this is still happening, it still hasn't died out. And, which, I don't know if the problem is because there aren't enough people that are staying home and not doing anything, and there's still too many people exposing germs. But I feel like it's hard to get the whole world to stop doing things. And, people are still going to go to the grocery store. People are still going to go to, a place like Walmart to buy certain things. So it's asking a lot. In which it's necessary. But at the same time, I don't think, I have both my grandmas are having a hard time accepting that they can't do anything. They have to stay in their houses. Which gives me another reason to feel like I'm always mentioning to my parents that I feel like both my grandmas are not that different from me. They are different, but they also have some similarities. And I don't know if that stems from the fact that they're in the same age group or other reasons. I don't know. I mean, but yeah, I feel like they have a lot in common, not just with the fact that they both can't stand the fact that they have to stay inside in their houses, but the reason why they can't stand it, which is they're both very lonely. It's kind of hard, and we can't, which, by the way, I probably should go ahead and, I promised my mom that I would FaceTime her, so maybe during lunch I'll FaceTime her or something. Just to say hi, because I know she's very lonely. I mean, sadly, I don't have a much of a relationship with the other grandma, so it's kind of, I just don't feel the desire to communicate with my other grandma. Because you guys don't know, you might think that's mean or like selfish of me. But like I said, I have more of a relationship with my grandma on my mom's side, so I would be willing to do that, which I am going to do that. Probably around lunch, like maybe upload this video, and then just while I'm eating my lunch, maybe FaceTime her for a little bit. But anyway, so that is what's going on with me right now. I'm gonna finish. I don't have much longer to finish with Library Policeman, so at least I'll have that one done. And audiobooks are really helping too, which let me go ahead and talk about that. So I forgot about that. So I just finished reading yesterday. I finished Down Among the Sticks and Bones, which is the second book in the Wayward Children series. And I feel like it's so far the impression I'm getting from these books is, yeah, you could read them as standalones, but there are aspects that link them together that, certain things might not make sense if you don't read the other books. So if you're not interested in the series, just stop after the first book and don't go on. I mean, you could go on. It's not a huge deal, like especially in the Jack and Jill story, which is what Down Among the Sticks and Bones is about. But Every Heart a Doorway did introduce us to those characters, although some people say in the reviews, like Murphy Napier mentioned in her review, she feels like you should probably read Down Among the Sticks and Bones. I think it was her who said it, that you should read that one first, and then read Every Heart a Doorway, because Every Heart a Doorway kind of tells you what happened to Jack and Jill, but not in detail. Like, you get the basic gist of what happened to them, while in Down Among the Sticks and Bones, it actually gives you what happened to them. It gives you the details of their time and their experience in the world that they went to and why they got kicked out. Like, you have these, and why they are the way they are. Which is very interesting. It's a very interesting story. You have these two twin sisters who have such a strong bond because they're twins. Like, I watched a video, I don't know if it was the channel The Take on YouTube or something else, where they talked about twins and how twins a lot of times have a very strong bond, and they portray that a lot in movies and books and TV shows. Like, they even argue, the narrator even talks about how you could say that that's how it is with Cersei Lannister and Jaime Lannister, that because they're twins and they were like attached to each other, so they have such a strong bond. And it kind of portrays a similar situation where, as Jack and Jill's, where Cersei kind of, I think on some level, she kind of resents Jaime because he's the man, he's the male. And so he gets special treatment and he's allowed to rule and stuff. His father wants him to rule and praises him and thinks he's, while Cersei, who works hard, she's the one who has the ambition to run the Seven Kingdoms, and she's the one who works so hard and, to please their father and to live up to his expectations. But because she's a woman, she's a female, so it's like, no, you can't do this. You just have to look pretty and find a husband. And he doesn't take her seriously, but she is the one who's most like their father. And I feel like you kind of get a similar thing in Down Among the Sticks and Bones with Jack and Jill, because Jill is the one who wants to please the master. She's the one who wants to live up to these expectations. And she kind of resents Jack a little bit. And Jack kind of resents her a little bit too. But they also love each other, just like Cersei and Jaime love each other. And Jill wants to be Jack, wants to be the role that she is given. Like the catalyst that leads them to become the people that they are by the time they get kicked out of their world is that their parents, they're those type of people. Actually, they kind of reminded me of the Dursleys from Harry Potter. Those people want everything to be perfect. Everything has to be, they're all about the image, and they want everything to be perfect and pristine, and they're like the perfect image, the perfect ideal, and the only reason why they both end up wanting children is because, it will look good, and people, they want to have something to be proud of, something to represent them, and make them look good, because, they want to be able to brag to their friends that, my child is, they're gonna be like me someday, they're gonna live up to what, and like the husband wants a perfect little boy that he can shape and mold to be a mini him, and then the same thing with the wife, she wants a perfect girl that she can dress up, and she wants a doll, a living, breathing doll, and so that's the only reason. And then, like, it's so funny because when they end up having the baby, they are so, living in their own little world and thinking, they're so determined, thinking that they're going to get what they want. They don't even consider the possibility that things happen when you get pregnant. You could lose a child. You could have a miscarriage. Your child, you might not have a boy, or you might not have the sex of the baby that you want. Like with my sister, she's having her third child, and I want her to have at least one girl, and she wants it too, but she might just end up having 3 boys, which is fine, which is great. I mean, I love my nephews, and I will be happy with if she has, because it's something you just gotta accept, because she might not, we can't control it, they make the whole thing about, the husband chooses the sex of the baby, and I don't know how that works, but in the long run, can you really control that? So she might, even though we want her to have a girl, even though she wants a girl, she might not have a girl, so you have to be prepared for that. You're not always going to get what you want. And that's the problem with the couple, Jack and Jill's parents, is they're thinking, they're always like, because they're thinking, I can control this. If I want a girl, I'm going to get a girl. If I want a boy, I'm going to get a boy. It's like, no, things are unpredictable. You can't control this kind of thing, especially, like, you can't control the sex of your child. And they end up getting 2 girls, and, in fact, before, how they always say, you gotta wait for a certain period of time before you tell people that you're pregnant, because what if you lose the baby? What if you have a miscarriage? And, that, even my sister, didn't want anyone to tell anyone. All 3 times, she has not wanted anyone to tell anyone that she's pregnant until I think 12 weeks or something, because she could lose the baby. It might not happen. And, knock on wood, something could still happen to her child, because nature's unpredictable. And the doctor, the nurse practitioner or doctor, whatever, tells the couple, don't tell anyone till a certain point, because something might happen, and they, of course, thinking all about loving control and stuff, and thinking they control nature and stuff, thinking, like, they find it silly and ridiculous. The doctor saying, well, don't tell anyone to a certain point, because all they care about is looking good and impressing people, so they tell people. And it's funny, you have the narrator talking about and saying, talking to the reader and saying that all their friends are thinking, they would, they think that they're not parent material, but at the same time, they don't tell it to them, they just think it. And they, it's proven that they aren't parent material. And, which I'm curious how the little boy's gonna be. I'm I'm curious if we're ever gonna see that. If we're gonna ever meet the although Jack and Jill end up going, I don't think we ever will. But I would be curious if we ever did meet the boy again. There's Jack and Jill's brother, and maybe see how he turned out. Was he exactly what they wanted? But anyway, so they turn Jillian. So and then when they're born, the husband has the nerve to be a little annoyed that he doesn't have a boy, that they're both girls. Like, he's all thinking, oh, we're gonna have one boy and one girl. And in a way, they get what they want, but not in the way that they expect. Like, physically, they're both girls, but I think Jack is, I don't know if Jack would consider transgender or just gay. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how, I have to look if Jack is considered a she or a they. But they make Jillian into the perfect boy because the dad decides to claim Jillian as the boy. So she becomes a tomboy. And she's all brave, not afraid to get dirty, likes to run around and play soccer and all that. And then Jack is the one or Jacqueline. I love that her name's Jacqueline, or Jack. As someone who, that's my name. Although I think Sean McGuire spells it L-I-N-E, and I spell my name L-Y-N. But, shapes her to be the girl, the one who's afraid to get dirty, and, doesn't want to, she can't run around, just act like a lady all the time and wear pretty dresses. But then, because they've been suppressed and told to be a certain way their whole lives, and they're afraid to be anything else and to break their parents' rules and to not follow they become very suppressed, to the point of I feel like when you're suppressed, you're more prone to rebel if you're given the opportunity. Like, you're cautious about it, but I think you're also the temptation to rebel and not to follow the expectations of the person who's forcing you to repress your true self or not figure out who your true self is on your own, is you are more prone to rebel and to become something completely different from what they expected you to be. Because it's so much pressure and you're so afraid that all of a sudden the temptation, it makes it more tempting to become the thing that the other person doesn't want you to be. Because it's not always apparent, sometimes. So it's just and so they go to this gothic world, and Jillian becomes the more feminine one, and Jack becomes the more, I don't know what the opposite word of, I can't think of it, for some reason I can't think of the opposite of femininity, masculinity. She becomes the more masculine one. She chooses to live with the mad scientist, and Jill chooses to live with the handsome master vampire guy, and Jill is so selfish. I wanted to, as I said in my Goodreads review, I didn't have any strong feelings about Jill. I mean, in the book, but then, we do see it. We do see her selfishness and brattiness and her vanity in Every Hearted Doorway, but I feel like it's really the main focus in Down Among the Sticks and Bones, which makes sense because it's about the two of them. And it's so interesting that she's so selfish, always puts her need, doesn't care about what Jack wants, thinks that her life is so much better than Jack's, and really, and has no problem hurting Jack to get what she wants. And she's also a very jealous and controlling woman, even though she resents her sister and wants the role that her sister was given. She also doesn't want to share her sister, which is funny because you learn that the master doesn't want to share Jillian. So, and the only reason why the master doesn't hurt Jack is because Jillian, cares about Jack and loves Jack, and doesn't want to share her any more than the master wants to share her. share Jill. So it's a very interesting dynamic to read about. And I can want to continue reading more books about sisterly bonds, because I feel like there's not enough, especially in like the fantasy genre. Like if you're reading contemporary or something, or even, I feel like they don't focus, and then they'll focus on that, but I want to see it more in fantasy, where there's more stories about siblings and more stories about sisters particularly. And not just those fluffy ones like in kids' books that are uncommon, but the messy relationships like Jack and Jill's relationship. I also found their world was interesting with the whole mad scientist. Of course, I think I would have liked it even more if I read it back when I was a teenager, because that was when I was kind of interested in paranormal. I love Twilight. Yes, I love Twilight. But again, was not. And I loved like the House of Night series, although I ended up DNFing the series, even though I think I was almost done with the series. There was only a few more books to go. I just couldn't take it anymore. I love shows like Are You for the Dark, Charmed, and stuff like that. Like all those, like the horror, fantastical, paranormal stuff. I still like it. I'm just not as big of a fan anymore. I've kind of moved on from that kind of stuff. But I think I definitely would have liked it a little bit more. But like I said, I kind of agree that it does kind of dampen it a little bit, because we already know what happens. But at the same time, I like seeing the details and understanding how it happened, and the catalyst, the things that led to the events that we're told about in Every Heart a Doorway. And now I'm reading Beneath the Sugar Sky, which starts up very interesting. And refers back to a character that we met in Every Heart a Doorway. So this is definitely an example of where you probably should at least read Every Heart a Doorway. You don't have to read Down Among the Sticks and Bones, but at least read Every Heart a Doorway. It's interesting, like, when I hear people talk about the series, I feel like a lot of people say they only like certain books in the series. They don't like the overall series. They just like certain books. I mean, they don't hate the ones that they don't like. It's just that there's ones that they prefer over others. So it's very interesting. I think, with any other generic series, like, the Seven Realms series, I'm pointing down to the book down here. But that one also has a continuation, like, in the same with Harry Potter. All the first 3 books do have individual stories, but most series that I've read anyway, they're continuing, each going into the other. And, like, the story continues in the next book, but it's not like you can read them. You can't read them as a standalone at all, because it wouldn't make any sense. While this series is one that you could potentially read each book as a standalone. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could, in a way, because they are their own individual stories with the beginning and an end. Although, I don't remember if it's the current one I'm reading that a reviewer said, or Down Among the Sticks and Bones, where someone did say that they felt like it felt incomplete, like there was more to the story and this was just the beginning. Like, but I don't remember which one it was. But I feel like these, like I said, I feel like you could potentially read them as a standalone, but then you might get a little bit lost. Because they're not in a big way, but all of a sudden you might be told something that refers to something from in the previous book, and it's like you might be a little confused. So, although you could look it up if you wanted to. You could look on it on a website about the books. But anyway, so I can't really say anything about the Sugar Sky, because, like I said, I feel like this one you definitely need to read the previous book. Not Every Heart a Doorway you need to read to get although they kind of do tell you what happened in Every Heart a Doorway about what happened to this character, but then, so I guess you could, and I wonder if that's why some authors and series will just, in each book, will remind you what is going on and what has happened, because I think you might forget or something. Although, it's hard when you read it back to back with a series, because then you're like, okay, I already know this stuff. You don't need to tell me again. I remember this, but when they first came out, I guess they didn't come out back to back, so it's like you might not remember. Okay, so I just wanted to, this time I really am done, and if you guys like this video, be sure to give a thumbs up, click subscribe if you haven't already, and I will talk to y'all later. Oh, and click the bell notification below if you want to be notified when I post more videos, and feel free to share in the comments below what you're reading. And now I can say I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!